The whispering convent. The storm began just as Sister Clara stepped through the gates of steady Thora's convent, a place forgotten by the world and swallowed by the Romanian woods. It wasn't marked on any map. She had been sent by the Vatican, after reports of vanishing clergy and strange chanting that echoed from the hills at night. Locals called it the Hollow Nunnery. No one ventured close. She arrived at twilight, greeted not by the nuns, but by silence. The heavy wooden doors creaked open on their own. Inside, candlelight flickered unnaturally against blackened stone walls. The scent of decay and incense wrapped around her like a noose. "Sister Agnes?" she called out, voice echoing. No answer. The chapel loomed ahead. Dust covered the altar, and the crucifix above was missing Christ's figure. In its place was a stitched cloth crudely resembling a nun's veil, nailed into the cross. The air grew colder. A faint whisper curled behind her ear. "She's watching." Clara spun around. No one. Deeper in the convent, she found abandoned cells with strange symbols scrawled in ash. Each bed had restraints and the mirrors were shattered, every shard missing. The kitchen held rotting food still on plates, as if they all left mid-meal, or had been taken. In the library, she discovered a journal with cracked leather binding. It belonged to Mother Serafini the abbess. The final entry read, "The Veiled One walks again. We chained her beneath the altar in 1639. But the seal weakens. We chant to keep her sleeping. One nun must be sacrificed every full moon. Last night, Sister Miriam refused." Just then, the bells began tolling on their own. Clara stumbled back into the chapel. The stitched veil on the cross was gone. She turned and gasped. At the end of the aisle stood a nun in a tattered habit, face hidden beneath a black veil, unmoving, silent. But Clara could hear. Breathing. Shallow. Guttural. Then, the nun's head twitched. Once. Twice. Jerking like a puppet. The candles blew out, and in total darkness, the whisper came again, closer now. "You were expected." The nun without a face. Clara stumbled backward in the pitch-black chapel, her breath ragged. The whisper had come from inches away, close enough to feel its chill on her skin. Suddenly, the candles reignited by themselves. The chapel was empty, but on the pew closest to her lay a fresh object, a rosary, twisted and charred black, with a single crimson bead glowing faintly at the center. It pulsed like a heartbeat. Clara refused to touch it. She returned to the library, flipping through more pages of the abbess's journal. A hidden passage was mentioned beneath. The chapel sealed with holy iron and ancient rites. It led to her prison. The Veiled One was not a nun. She had never been. She was something older, something that wore faith like a mask. The last sister to look beneath the veil had gouged her own eyes out. Clara shivered. As the storm outside worsened, she decided to search the chapel floor for the hidden seal. She noticed the tiles near the altar were marked with symbols, barely visible under the dust. She pressed one, and a hidden trapdoor groaned open. From the depths came the sound of a chain dragging. She held her breath. A mistake! Whispers erupted. "Closer! Closer! Feed us your name." Clara recoiled, slamming the trapdoor shut. But as she turned, the pews were no longer empty. Nuns sat in perfect rows, habits gray with rot, hands folded. Their faces were entirely blank, smooth skin stretched where eyes and mouths should be. They all turned their heads at once toward her. Frozen in place, Clara could barely breathe. Then the figures twitched, stood, and began to float, drifting silently down the aisles toward her. Their habits whispered across the stone like leaves in wind. She screamed and ran. She locked herself inside one of the cells and collapsed. Her hands trembled as she clasped her own rosary, whispering prayers through clenched teeth. Outside her door, something stopped. Knuckles rapped. Once, twice. Then, a soft voice, familiar and wrong, whispered, "Sister Clara, it's your turn now. Come look under the veil." She held her breath, shaking. The voice grew more urgent. "Say your name. She can't wear you until you say it." Then silence, until the doorknob slowly turned. The name game. The doorknob creaked as it twisted, slow and deliberate. Clara backed against the cell wall, clutching her rosary like a weapon. The ancient door shuddered, then stopped. Silence returned, but it felt coiled, like something waiting. She waited. 10 minutes passed. Maybe more. Then, 3 knocks. Clara snapped. In the name of the Father, the Son, bang! The door burst open, but no one stood there. Only a single black veil floated in. It hovered mid-air, swaying like caught in a breeze. Then, it dropped to the floor in a lifeless heap. Clara crept toward it. Just fabric. But underneath was something cold. A piece of folded parchment. She unfolded it. A list. Names. Dates all scratched out. Except one. Hers. Written in blood. Sister Clara, June 7, 2025. Today. She dropped it. Footsteps echoed down the hall. She ran. She turned corners blindly, deeper into the convent's underbelly. Every hallway looked the same: stone, candlelit, lined with rotting paintings of saints whose eyes had been scraped off. She found a stairwell spiraling downward. She hesitated, then descended. The air grew wet and thick. The light dimmed. At the bottom, she entered a vast underground crypt lined with coffins, each nailed shut. In the center stood an altar covered in black cloth. As she approached, a nun's voice echoed from behind a pillar, soft, singing, "Hallowed be the name, hallowed be the name." Clara crept closer. The singer turned. It was Sister Agnes, or what was left of her. Her face had been flayed away, her mouth stitched into a smile. She pointed at Clara and whispered, "You said your name. Now you belong to her." The black cloth on the altar lifted by invisible hands. Beneath it sat a small wooden box, covered in chains. It rattled. Clara turned to run, but a dozen faceless nuns blocked the path. They moved silently, lifting veils to reveal nothing. No faces, just swirling black voids that hissed her name. "Clara, Clara, come kneel." Behind her, the box burst open with a shriek. A black, clawed hand emerged gripping a white veil. Then came the sound of bone cracking. As something stood, she had awoken. The birth of silence. Clara's scream was swallowed by the thick, suffocating air as she rose from the box. The veiled one stood nearly 7 feet tall, her habit soaked in blood and ash. Her face was hidden beneath a flowing white veil, stitched shut with rosary wire. But beneath it, something moved, something pulsing, alive, wrong. The faceless nuns dropped to their knees in worship. Clara backed against the altar, eyes wide. The veiled one didn't walk. She glided. Each movement left scorched prints on the stone. Clara clutched her rosary, praying aloud, louder, desperate. The veiled one stopped, tilted her head, then hissed. It wasn't a sound, it was the absence of sound. A devouring silence that made Clara's ears bleed. Her thoughts stuttered. Her prayers crumbled. The faceless nuns chanted in one dry, rasping voice. "She who wears the veil becomes the veil. She who names herself, gives herself." Clara screamed, "I didn't give anything. You can't take me." The veiled one moved closer, but suddenly, the cross hanging from Clara's rosary turned red hot in her palm. She screamed in pain, but the burning light from it forced the veiled one back a step. She shrieked not in fear, but fury. The faceless nuns recoiled. It was working. Clara turned and ran. Through the crypt, up the stairwell, past the singing corpse of Sister Agnes, who now bled from her eyes as she whispered, "Too late, too late. The name has been given." Back in the library, Clara slammed the door and barricaded it with a shelf. She grabbed the abbess's journal, flipping frantically. One passage stood out. "The veiled one is bound by name. She can only claim what names itself. Silence is protection. Prayer is armor. But one nun must veil themselves and descend in her place." A horrible realization struck her. Someone had to wear the veil. Someone had to stay behind. The trapdoor in the chapel creaked again. Chains rattled in the distance. She wasn't alone anymore. From the hallway, a low voice called out. Not a whisper, a man's voice. "Sister Clara, Vatican sent me. I'm Father Marius. Are you all right?" She ran to the door but hesitated. How did he know her name? Father Marius. Clara pressed her ear to the wooden door. The man outside repeated, "Sister Clara, please open the door." His voice was warm, calm, but something was off. Too perfect, too polished. "Who sent you?" she called out. A pause. Then, "The Vatican. You were overdue. They told me to come alone. No one knew I was coming except the bishop." Silence. Then, "You said your name, Clara. That's enough for her." She stepped back. The door exploded inward, wood splintering. A towering figure stepped through, not a priest, not a man, a vessel. The thing wearing Father Marius's face had too many teeth, too wide a grin. Its clerical collar melted into its flesh. It hissed her name like a prayer. Clara ran. The convent warped as she moved. Hallways lengthened. Doors led to bricked walls. The crucifixes were upside down now. Statues wept black tears. She ended up back in the chapel. Of course, the veil was waiting draped across the altar. But now, it breathed. The journal's words burned in her memory. One nun must veil herself. If no one took her place, she would be free. Not just here, but everywhere. Clara stepped toward the altar. The chapel darkened. Thunder cracked above. The stained glass shattered inward, blowing like razor shards around her. A cyclone of whispers filled the room. Faceless nuns surrounded her again, but they didn't move. They waited. Clara reached out and touched the veil. It was ice cold and soft like dead skin. She lifted it. For a moment, the whispers stopped. The faceless nuns bowed. The air stilled. But then, a scream erupted from the floorboards. The crypt's trapdoor blew open. The veiled one rose. But now, her veil was missing. Clara held it. The creature shrieked, exposed, melting under invisible flame. Its face, if it had one, screamed through 1,000 mouths. It lunged at Clara. Clara placed the veil over her own head. Everything went black. The eyes behind the veil, darkness, but not the absence of light. This was living darkness, thick, suffocating, full of teeth. Clara couldn't move. The veil wrapped around her head like it had a mind of its own, tightening over her eyes, fusing to her skin. She screamed, but no sound came out. Her thoughts echoed, spiraling in on themselves. Then images, flashes, a memory not her own. She saw the original veiled one centuries ago. Not a nun, a witch, betrayed by her coven, bound beneath the chapel and gagged with a holy veil sewn by cursed hands. To speak her name was to set her free. She hadn't died. She had waited, feeding on the names of the faithful, collecting them, wearing them like masks. Each nun who entered the convent gave a piece of herself. Those who stayed became her. Clara fell through time, through pain, through faces she didn't recognize but somehow remembered. And then, she was standing in the chapel again, alone. The convent was silent, normal. The statues no longer cried. The crosses were upright. The candles flickered peacefully. She removed the veil. It came off easily like silk, but her reflection in the stained glass caught her eye. It wasn't her. Not quite. Her eyes were entirely black. She turned around. The trapdoor to the crypt had sealed shut. The altar was clean. The pews empty. Had she done it? She walked through the halls. Every door was now open. The faceless nuns were gone. The journal in the library had disintegrated to ash. She wandered into the main corridor and found a mirror. Her face was hers, but her mouth didn't move when she spoke. Her voice echoed in her mind, not out loud. The veil hadn't left her. It had entered her. The black pilgrimage. Clara wandered the empty convent, a ghost in her own skin. No more whispers, no more nuns, just stillness. But inside her, something watched. The veil had seeped into her, wrapping around her soul. She could feel it pulse when she blinked, twitch when she prayed. Outside, the storm had vanished. Sunlight pierced the clouds. She left steady Thora's with no one stopping her. The heavy gates creaked open without resistance. Down in the village, the townspeople stared as she walked past. Eyes wide, some dropped to their knees, others ran. One old woman made the sign of the cross, trembling. Something followed her like a shadow. She stopped at a chapel to report what had happened, but the priest recoiled when she approached. Her rosary turned to ash in his hand. Mirrors cracked, candles snuffed out. "You carry her," the priest gasped. "She wears you now." Clara tried to scream, but her mouth didn't open. She fled. Alone, she wandered from church to church, seeking help. No one would take her in. Crosses burned her skin. Holy water boiled on contact. Her reflection vanished completely. One night, she dreamt of the convent, only it was now covered in vines and bones. The faceless nuns waited for her return. In the dream, they bowed and whispered, "She walks again." When Clara woke, her hands were bleeding from claw marks she didn't remember making. In a desperate attempt, she boarded a train to Rome, hoping the Vatican could cleanse her. But on the train, a child pointed at her and asked, "Mommy, why does that lady have two faces?" Clara looked out the window. Her reflection was there, but behind her, just over her shoulder, was another veil, stitched, smiling. The veil's hunger. In Rome, Clara found herself inside the ancient Vatican archives, hoping for salvation. Father Lorenzo, an aging exorcist, agreed to help, but only if she told the full story. She whispered the horrors, her voice echoing against stone walls. He nodded gravely. The veil, he said, is not merely cloth. It is a prison and a parasite. It feeds on faith and names, growing stronger with each soul it claims. And now, it has chosen you as its host. As Lorenzo prepared the rites, Clara's vision blurred. She saw through the veil's eyes 1,000 faceless sisters begging, pleading, clawing at her from the darkness. The veil wanted more than a host. It wanted a legacy. The ritual began. Candles flickered wildly. Latin prayers thundered through the chamber. Clara screamed silently. Suddenly, the veil flared, tightening like a noose. She felt fingers cold, sharp, curling around her throat. Father Lorenzo's voice faltered. In a final surge, Clara broke free and fled into the labyrinthine corridors. Behind her, the veil's voice whispered, "You cannot run from what you wear." Outside, the city was unchanged, but Clara was not. Her shadow stretched long and twisted. The veil whispered in her mind, "Find the next. Give me your name, or I will take it by force." And somewhere, far away, a new nun heard her name whispered on the wind. The silent choir. Clara was no longer fully herself. The veil whispered secrets she shouldn't know. Ancient prayers that warped reality. Curses that bent light. And a language older than the church itself. She wandered Rome's catacombs, drawn to an abandoned chapel beneath the city, where faint chanting echoed through the tunnels. Inside, she found a congregation of cloaked figures, the silent choir, their faces hidden behind veils like hers. They moved in eerie unison, singing without sound. One stepped forward, voice like a hiss. "You carry the veil. Join us or be consumed." Clara felt the veil's hunger rising. She clenched her fists, fighting the pull. The choir surrounded her, hands reaching through the shadows. Suddenly, a voice broke the silence. "Clara!" It was Father Lorenzo, holding a relic, a silver crucifix pulsing with light. He thrust it forward. The veil screamed an unholy sound that rattled bones and cracked stone. The silent choir recoiled, disappearing into the darkness. Clara collapsed, the veil loosening, but not gone. Lorenzo helped her up. "This is far from over," he warned. "The veil spreads like a plague. You are the only one who can stop it." Clara nodded, newfound determination blazing in her blackened eyes. The last veil. Clara and Father Lorenzo returned to steady Thora's, now a battleground between light and shadow. The veiled one's power surged, twisting the convent into a labyrinth of nightmare. Faceless nuns rose again, their silent screams piercing the night. Clara stood at the altar, clutching the silver crucifix, her black eyes glowing with unholy fire. "Your reign ends here," she whispered. The veil fought, a living shroud of darkness wrapping tighter around her mind. But Clara drew strength from every name taken, every soul trapped. She chanted prayers older than the convent itself. The veiled one shrieked, the veil unraveling like smoke. With a final cry, Clara pulled the veil from her head and wrapped it around the altar, binding it with iron chains forged from faith and blood. The convent trembled, then stilled. Morning light broke through shattered windows, revealing the silence of peace. But Clara knew the truth no one else did. The veil was not destroyed. It was sleeping, waiting for the next name. They sealed the chapel. They burned the books. They buried the veil beneath chains of silver and sanctified stone. But some curses don't die, they remember. Now, in the dead silence of night, if you listen closely, you'll hear the soft rustle of fabric dragging across your floor. Not wind, not imagination, just the veil finding its way back. Because once it sees you, it never forgets. And when it's ready, you won't hear it slip over your face until it's too late.